Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is Ariana, and I'm a little rusty, so bear with me this video. In 2021, the production of a certain coming-of-age film exploded on TikTok after multiple videos promoting the concept short and fundraising for the feature film. This film was writer and director Sarah Holland's passion project titled Egghead and Twinkie. And with the help of their online following, Sarah and the crew were able to raise enough funding to actually make this feature film. And I actually had the pleasure of being a crew member on this film. It was actually the first film set that I ever worked on. Now, as the film is in the midst of its festival run, it's about to finish up at the Florida Film Fest, I want to take a second to spotlight the production and the importance of this Florida-made film. Egghead and Twinkie follows a queer woman who goes by the name of Twinkie, who convinces her best friend, nicknamed Egghead, in an impulsive fit of passionate youth to road trip to Texas. Though she claims the trip is to bond with Egghead before he goes off to college, she secretly wants to go in order to meet up with this girl she's been texting, BD. The film is another notch in the belt of the road film genre, and this time it brings in a fresh and underrepresented perspective of an Asian American gay woman. So while the film features a road trip from Florida to Texas, the filming predominantly took place in Central Florida. This often involved having to drive an hour away from Orlando to access more rural landscapes in Central Florida. And it's funny because I'm filming this video today and I've actually been getting a lot of Snapchat flashbacks of driving to set and being on set, which is a really full circle moment. So some personal background. At the time of the production, I had only recently moved out of my family home, and I had no idea where to start in terms of getting into the film industry and working on a film set. I remember being in the Zoom call where we got to meet with the director and the producer in order to try and get a position on the film, and I remember being told the plot of this film. And there were a couple other films that were recruiting as well, but I heard the plot of this one and I just knew that it was my favorite and it intrigued me the most. And so I went into the breakout room and just sat there and listened to what Sarah Holland had to say. And I thought it was a really beautiful story that I really wanted to be a part of. And I am so lucky that I was chosen to do so. I remember being incredibly excited that the first film that would be on my resume would be one that was female directed about a queer person of color. Up until that point, I had no idea what a film set looked like or how it even operated at all. There are so many moving parts at all times, so many people doing the littlest things in order to create this huge thing that you won't see the final product of for a while. So when I first became involved, we were in the first phase of shooting, which was about a couple of weeks. The production was filmed in phases because it was during COVID, so we wanted to make sure everyone was safe. I actually started out as a COVID safety PA. And so to know that it was filmed in fragments and now to be sitting here having seen the final product is unbelievable, honestly. To see these locations come to life in such a new way on camera, to see the product of the work of all the people I had the pleasure of meeting and working with and seeing our names in a credit sequence is surreal. But honestly, it wasn't easy. I was 19 and 20, working hours I had never worked before in my life. I was extremely nervous about the impression I was making on all these people who would be in my network for the next couple of years as I started studying film. I was coming home exhausted like everyone else, even though I was doing a fraction of the work that they were doing. It was tough. It was a very tough experience, but it proved to me that I could do anything. And I know that sounds very cliche, but I was finding my footing in this new city, and if I could do this grueling but rewarding production, what couldn't I do in this new environment? And looking at it from a more macro level, it's also worth noting that it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows filming in Central Florida, specifically a gay story in Central Florida. An official red state, Florida has passed several bills recently restricting many of the central themes in Egghead and Twinkie. This includes critical studies and conversations in the classroom surrounding gender, sexuality, and race. Director Holland even reported that hosts of certain locations would initially seem eager to offer up their space for the film, but upon discovering the nature of the script, denied location access to the production. Now, to speak more technically on these bills that are being passed, the Parental Rights and Education Bill, CSCS-HB 1557, passed in 2022, required teachers to share any information regarding a child's physical, mental, or emotional state with the parents. This worried the LGBTQ community and allies who viewed this as a danger to queer students who were not out to their unsupportive families. This meant that the classroom was no longer a safe space for these kids who could actually explore their sexuality or even just talk about it with their peers and their teachers. Another bill, HB 1069, parentheses 23R, was just passed at the end of March 2023. This bill ramps up the former stakes, seeking to restrict the visibility of gender and sexuality in the classroom from pre-K through 8th grade. And this means the restriction of pronouns, censoring books deemed inappropriate, and that typically is because of their mentions of queer topics. This wave of anti-queer political lawmaking has created a tense environment in the state as teachers and students fear for their safety and ability to be their authentic selves. I'm currently getting a minor in women and gender studies, and my professor of one of my classes told me that she would be limiting some of her content because she was worried she would lose her job. Another friend of mine, their mother is a principal and had to remove their safe space sticker off their wall. Not only that, but this government-approved hatred is enabling others who fear, dislike, or don't understand queer people to feel emboldened in their own hatred and bias. To give you a more specific and recent example, in January, the gay club in Orlando, Southern Nights, was vandalized. The windows were shattered, and thankfully the club was closed, but it eventually came out that the person who did this was actually a former employee. But before anyone knew that, the fear that came from this same city who felt the pain of the Pulse shooting was immediate. I actually drove past Pulse accidentally about a month ago, and it was the first time I had ever seen it with my own eyes. I was still living in South Florida when it happened, and it was horrible to see this place I had only read about. Orlando has some scars, and it's devastating that some queer people here feel they can't even have safe, legal fun without feeling like they're putting a target on themselves. All because people who feel they're in the right to exhibit their hatred and lack of empathy. I have friends who don't feel comfortable returning to Southern Nights anymore, and I feel that way sometimes too, which is unfair because I'll never forget that I came out to my parents the day after I visited that club for the first time. After having the freedom and the spirit to unapologetically be myself, I knew I didn't want to hold on to that secret anymore, because that's what liveliness and love and art should foster: community, not secrecy. As the banning of books continues, we're forced to consider how the arts as a whole will be affected by these racist, homophobic, and transphobic policies. Media by queer creators, especially indie creators, already struggles to maintain itself with rising costs. But for this work to be questioned, censored, and altogether removed from classrooms and schools is a general threat to artistic integrity. Egghead and Twinkie is not yet rated, but will most likely be classified as a PG-13 film for some swearing. And though it centers on high school seniors, it has a very animated and childlike ambience. Those turning 13 will most likely be in the 7th or 8th grade, meaning, according to these bills, they will be in the grades in which their art is censored. In the film, Twinkie knows that she likes girls from a young age. They show that. They show that she exhibits that and understands that very early on, even if she may not have the language to express that to others. And though the story is not the same for everyone, it wasn't for me, it took me a while. Restricting the representation of queer folks in the media children engage with will only delay the inevitable and fundamentally unchangeable. We are who we are, and we should be able to exist just so, proudly and be loved and respected in return. Queer content is not going to disappear just because our legislation wants it to. Being queer has always been tightly ingrained with rebellion, and visibility can be revolutionary. All this legislation is doing is harming younger people who will have to fight twice as hard to find a community they already belong to. And the fact of the matter is, not everyone is able to withstand that hardship. Not everyone can find that strength in themselves when they feel they don't have a support system around them. Egghead and Twinkie fills a gap in the industry and tells a story about many things outside of sexuality: friendship, maturity, and overall confidence in our identity. Twinkie learned what it means to be a good friend, a good person, a happy person who can express herself both in life and in relationships healthily. And that's a message that anyone should be able to receive. Though, like I said, the production was filmed in fragments, I had the opportunity to finally watch the film during its run at the CineQuest Festival. I was able to watch it at my friend's home with all my close and, dare I say, gay friends. And it was truly a cinematic breath of fresh air. I am deeply grateful that a piece of media like this exists, and that I had the privilege to be able to work on it and see it. And those who relate to its story and its content should be able to have that same experience. What's happening in the States is unfair, but to see the amount of people who proudly worked on this film and made it happen, and now it's out there to be seen in Florida and in other states and in other countries, is unbelievable, because everyone who knows that they belong to the queer community or think that they might but can't access that yet should have the opportunity to learn and be exposed to that, because everyone's so afraid that exposure is this horrifying, deadly thing, when in reality, the kids who may already be contemplating these parts of themselves or even just want to learn more about them, there's nothing evil about that. There's nothing evil about love. There's nothing evil about learning. It's about connecting with those around you and finding a community that exists here and feeling at home in it. And that's all I want for everyone in this state and beyond. You should definitely check out Egghead and Twinkie on every social media. They're on TikTok, of course, but also on Instagram, and they post daily updates about what festivals they're screening at and where you can watch. And this is a film that needs your support. It's needed your support from the beginning, and you guys showed up and you gave it to them, and it made such a difference. So keep making that difference. Consume this media, promote it, and share it, because it truly is a gift to the world.